Iraq's President Saddam Hussein probably would never have been caught by the US if he hadn't liked a dish called mashkouf. For 32 weeks, the US Army gave it their all, searching high and low. But there was no sign of Iraq's former president, Saddam Hussein. It wasn't just the military working around the clock on this mission. US Special Forces, the CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, National Security Agency, and the FBI all played huge roles. Thousands of people from these agencies were focused on finding one man, Saddam Hussein. The US was determined. What was so dangerous about this guy, and how on earth did they find Saddam Hussein buried 6 feet underground in a hidden grave? Folks, this story starts after the 9/11 attacks in America, when Al-Qaeda struck New York and Washington, D.C. The whole world saw America's anger over that. At that time, American President George Bush decided that anyone supporting terrorism would be targeted. And yes, Saddam Hussein was the dictator of Iraq back then. Saddam Hussein wasn't directly involved with 9/11. But the US believed he was indirectly supporting various terrorist groups. Still, that wasn't enough reason to directly attack Iraq. It was clear that the US wanted to end Saddam Hussein's rule in Iraq, where he'd been in power in different roles for the past 24 years. So, to get a solid reason to remove Saddam and attack Iraq, the US started claiming that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass. They were hiding destruction, that is, nuclear weapons. Using this claim as their excuse, the US attacked Iraq in March 2003. The UK, Australia, and Poland's militaries backed the US, and after just 3 weeks of fighting, they reached Iraq's capital, Baghdad. On the very first day of the attack, President Saddam Hussein disappeared without a trace. When the American military reached Baghdad, they found no sign of Saddam Hussein anywhere. US tanks and troops took control of Baghdad and overthrew Saddam Hussein's 24-year rule. The famous Firdos Square there. Troops celebrated their victory by toppling Saddam Hussein's statue in the square. But while Saddam's statue had fallen, finding and taking down the real Saddam Hussein wasn't going to be that easy. Tracking down Saddam and his top government officials was the US military's highest priority. Every soldier was given full authority to capture Saddam and his 51 officials dead or alive if they were spotted anywhere. But there were a total of 52 officials on this most wanted list. Special playing cards were printed to help everyone remember the faces. These cards had pictures of Saddam Hussein and his 51 officers printed on them. Since a deck of playing cards has 52 cards, and the most wanted list also had 52 names, it matched perfectly. So, during their free time, soldiers would play games with these cards and get familiar with their targets' faces by seeing them repeatedly. For several months after that, the US military searched every inch of Iraq. They raided houses, interrogated relatives, checked shops, colleges, mosques. Nothing was left untouched. All they knew was Saddam. He's in Iraq, yes, but where exactly? This went on for months, yet no one could find any trace of Saddam Hussein or his 2 sons. After that, the US announced a reward of $55 million for any information on Saddam Hussein or his sons, $15 million each for his sons, and $25 million for Saddam himself. Many people in Iraq were actually against Saddam Hussein. That's why the US was sure that, tempted by the money, someone would come forward with info. And that's exactly what happened. One guy went to a US military base. They said that Saddam Hussein's 2 sons, Uday and Qusay, were inside my house. At first, no one believed it. But when the US military surrounded the house from all sides, it became clear that Uday and Qusay were actually there. They refused to come out quietly because they were heavily armed. So after several attempts, the house was hit with a missile attack. When the soldiers went inside, they found the dead bodies of both Uday and Qusay. In other words, the last hope of capturing Saddam Hussein was gone. But the US military didn't accept their defeat. Meanwhile, several of Saddam Hussein's associates were found and arrested alive. but no useful information came from them. 4 months had passed, and things had reached a point where the US military started thinking that maybe Saddam Hussein had died in some attack. With that in mind, their efforts began to slow down. Neither military operations nor intelligence reports showed any sign that Saddam Hussein was still alive. But then, an audio tape changed the whole story. It was an audio tape of Saddam Hussein in which he was expressing sorrow over the death of both his sons. This audio tape meant that Saddam Hussein was still alive. The US once again intensified its efforts to find Saddam, increasing the reward on his head from $25 million to $30 million, and also promising US citizenship to anyone who provided information. With such a huge reward at stake, everyone started trying their luck. The Iraqi people began giving false information, hoping that if Saddam Hussein was caught, there would be a reward for it. But this made things even harder for the US. Almost everyone printed on the playing cards had already been captured. Only a few were left, including Saddam Hussein himself. During this time, a sergeant named Eric Maddox from the Defense Intelligence Agency started thinking completely differently from the usual. He noticed that most of the people on the most wanted list were actually top officials in Saddam Hussein's government. Their power came from Saddam Hussein, not the other way around. Right now, if Saddam Hussein needs someone the most are his bodyguards. Saddam Hussein's bodyguards were divided into 3 groups. One group protected his palace. The second group went ahead to clear the areas Saddam was about to visit. And the third group was us. These guards were always with Saddam Hussein, and right now, he'd probably need them the most. Eric Maddox decided to find these guards by going to Saddam Hussein's hometown, Tikrit. There, he met the son of one of Saddam's bodyguards, Mohammed Ibrahim Omar. There was some interrogation, but the bodyguard was missing somewhere. Then he met an old servant of Saddam Hussein. Nothing much came out of it except that Saddam really liked a dish called maskouf, which is made from a fish found in Iraq. That's when Maddox remembered that during interrogation, the son of Saddam's bodyguard, Mohammed Ibrahim Omar, had mentioned his dad loved fishing and even owned a fish farm in a town called Samara. When Maddox reached the fish farm, there was Mohammed. I didn't find Ibrahim Umar himself, but I did come across 2 fishermen. These fishermen had no direct connection to Ibrahim Umar. However, one of them turned out to be a cousin of an Iraqi guerrilla fighter. Just so you know, after Saddam Hussein's regime was overthrown, his close military officials started a guerrilla war against the American forces. It was believed these guerrilla fighters took orders from Ibrahim Umar, who was Saddam's closest bodyguard. One of the fishermen also mentioned an uncle whose house is in Baghdad. The team surrounded that house in Baghdad, hoping to get some info, and surprisingly, Ibrahim Umar was hiding right there. Ibrahim Umar was Saddam Hussein's personal bodyguard, and he used to send Saddam dishes made from a special fish called maskouf from his fish farm. At the moment, he was leading a guerrilla war against the American military and was the only one who knew Saddam Hussein's real location. After being arrested, he refused to say anything. But when Maddox interrogated him and assured him that when his family was promised US citizenship, that's when he started talking. Ibrahim said that Saddam Hussein was hiding in Adwar, a town nearby. Based on his tip, US troops began searching Adwar. There were 2 farmhouses by the Tigris River, but both were empty. At that time, Ibrahim Umar, who was with the troops, pointed toward the ground where there was a rope. The rope was really long and went underground, leading into a spider hole far away. The entrance to this spider hole was sealed with a piece of styrofoam. When this opened the hole, all they saw inside was darkness. Just then, a soldier was about to throw a hand grenade inside when suddenly 2 hands appeared through the hole. It was a man with a long beard who said, "My name is Saddam Hussein, and I am the president of Iraq." The American army had successfully captured Saddam Hussein alive. After 32 weeks of continuous efforts, Eric Maddox's persistence finally paid off. Later, upon analysis, it was found that if Maddox hadn't discovered Saddam Hussein's liking for a dish named mashkouf, so maybe he would have never even made it this far. Later, the reason given for attacking Iraq was that Saddam Hussein was hiding weapons of mass destruction there, but they didn't find any. Even American President George Bush confirmed that they found nothing there. Hopefully, you all will like and share this video. Thanks so much for your loving comments. See you in the next awesome video.